Hey, what's up, everybody? Super excited to share with you one of the most interesting people here at LinkedIn. We have a lot of interesting people here, so that's definitely a compliment. Yeah, but would love to share with you tips for success in sales and relationship management. And would love to introduce you, Jheryn Kenney, who is an enterprise relationship manager in LinkedIn's Sales Solutions division at LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you, Davidson. You made me blush a little bit here, but I'm so excited to be here. It was just awesome from the time that we met, so I'm happy to be able to join you today.
Yeah. One of the things that definitely like stood out to me. So we were connected through Eddie, who we met at a sales success summit in Austin. So he spoke very highly of you. We had dinner, and he was just talking about like a lot of the in the sales community and how you guys are involved with that community.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but would love to kind of hear a little bit more about your background and sort of like what brought you to LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. It's interesting because I didn't, I know a lot of people are very intentional about landing here at LinkedIn because it's such a great place to be. But I think landed here kind of like by design, if you will. I like my background isn't in tech, but I've been selling for a long time, 20 years, whether it was direct sales when I was in Mary Kay. I sold in cosmetics in college to pay my way through school. I worked for Pfizer in the pharmaceutical industry, went on to do biotech sales, went back to Mary Kay, earned the pink Cadillac, had a good
Wow.
time. Yeah, it was fun. I even worked in industrial sales with Granger, but I think that experience with Granger, where I managed the Amazon account, sort of prepared me for what I do now as an enterprise relationship manager, but also it was actually leading an organization called the National Sales Network that brought me here because it's an organization for diverse sales professionals that Eddie is actively involved with as well. And I brought on LinkedIn as a sponsor. And literally, I was here conducting something that we used to do. It wasn't called Rock Your Profile, but it was the same thing. And my thought was like, okay, why are we doing this? I'm sure LinkedIn has an office in New York and they should be doing this instead.
Hmm.
So literally, that was the journey, kind of like bringing LinkedIn on and hosting that event here. And literally in the audience, I met my manager. I didn't realize, or my now manager, I didn't realize that he was somebody with the power to even hire me. But I think when you treat everyone well and you engage and care about people and what they have to share and bring your whole self, opportunity kind of creates itself. Or is
Wow.
created.
That's awesome. You mentioned self, like bringing your whole self. So it sounds like that's what definitely one of the reasons why I think people are attracted to you. You definitely have a sense of like authenticity, confidence. Like you definitely exude this sort of aura about you.
Thank
Um,
you.
would love to hear like a little bit more about like your self-development journey. It definitely seems like you're really into, improving yourself. Like what
Yeah,
prompted you to sort of have that mentality?
yeah, thank you. You're right to call it a mentality because I think it professional development has to come with intentionality. Like you have to like commit to it. It takes time and effort and energy in and outside of work hours. So for me, I think just as a young girl, I wasn't clear on what I wanted to do for a living, but I knew I wanted to be a businesswoman and I wanted to like be a boss chick. And I wanted to, back then, I wanted to carry a briefcase and wear high heels and all that good stuff. So it's a little bit different now because I did go through that phase in life, but this phase is even better and I don't have to wear heels all the time. So it's nice. But I think just coming from an environment where it was very competitive, I went to a science and tech school in high school. And remember, we had to test to get in. And like everybody was smart. Like, it wasn't enough to be smart or good at what you did because everybody was good. So you really had to put in work to stand out because I think the price of entry, kind of like LinkedIn, was high. You know what I mean? You had to
Yeah.
be excellent at what you did. And so understanding that there were distinguishing factors about people who stood out and who excelled above and beyond working hard and being good on paper. So that's when I think I understood the importance of it. Um, and also add having gotten fired from my first job.
Hmm.
I worked at Wendy's when I was 15 years old and I got fired because not because I didn't do a good job, but because I was too young to work. And, it was funny because in my mind, I decided at that point that I don't want to be, I decided that I want to be in a position where it's hard to replace me. I want to make it difficult for you to replace me. And so I just said, I'm going to put in the effort. And, that journey, I can share more about that journey if we're able. Do we have the time to share a little bit more? Okay.
Yeah, of course.
So when I was in high school, my mom and our husband got divorced, and I remember my mom, we had a big, beautiful house that like they had built from the ground up. It was custom and wonderful, and not to brag, but just that was my life. But they got divorced. And so now my mom had to pay for all of it on her own. And I remember my mom being very committed to our life not changing. So she had a great career. She's a corporate executive, but that wasn't enough because now she needed to basically bring in what two people did. And she started a business. It was Mary Kay Cosmetics, literally the pink Cadillac lipstick company. She started doing that to help pay, a little bit extra. And when we were 18, when I say we, me and my twin sister and I were 18, she signed us up. And literally we all started with this pink box, and it was up to you to create out of it whatever you wanted. And so with Mary Kay, it gave me an opportunity to invest in myself, like constantly. We weren't just going to sales training. All of it was about personal development, because people, at least that kind of business, people really wanted to be connected with somebody that they, would want to be connected with, essentially, so yeah, just I kind of fell in love with it then. And it was a senior director, Mary Kay, who introduced me to Landmark. So Landmark, for people who are, why don't you share a little bit? Because Davidson and I share this in common, that we're both students, I guess, if you will, of Landmark education. In addition to our formal education, there's an organization that does, it's what would you call it? Alternative education? I don't know, like it's extra. It's like professional development education. What would you describe it as?
Yeah, it's interesting. I definitely noticed there's a lot of like LinkedIners that have done Landmark, like Rosanya Druti went pretty far. She did the Introduction to Leaders program. Edwin Arister, we met during the Self-Expression Leadership program. And then Lisa Mesa was also,
okay. I should have known.
So that's how I know Lisa, actually. We met through another coaching program similar called Accomplishment Coaching.
Okay, very good.
But yeah, the way I describe it is it's like a program designed to help us like find out our blind spots, and through that self-discovery, we have more self-awareness around like how we relate to people or how we relate to problems and obstacles and things. And the goal of it is like, once you figure out your blind spots, like you don't let it like control like who you are. Like you can choose like who you are, despite like knowing that, there's going to be this like blind spot. So it's like a continuously discovery of like who you want to be and how you relate to other people.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, actually, you're right. I noticed a lot of people that do. I get like, is that called network marketing? Technically?
Some people call it network marketing. We used to call it direct sales because it was, selling directly to the customer. But yeah, you could call it either one.
Right. I do notice a lot of people that do direct sales are really into self-development, right? Like when you read all these self-development books, it helps you be able to, one, like have the entrepreneurial mindset, so that you don't make rejection mean something about you.
Right.
But then, being able to connect with many different types of people despite their backgrounds and their their circumstances. Like you're able to like be with many different types of people and not let it like affect like your self-worth, really.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point, because when I think back, the organization I led, I grew it literally from 0 people to over 1,100. And when I think about the range of people in that organization, they were anywhere from 18 years old to like, I think the oldest was 72 or so. They were from college students to, VPs, everybody joined for a different reason, and everybody was looking for something different or open to something different. And so it really taught me a lot about people, like you said, yeah, it was a journey, and 100% of it was about development. Not at all. I love lipstick, but it wasn't about at all
Hmm.
selling lipsticks at all. It was really about developing yourself and helping others to do the same.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, on that note, you're definitely a minority, like in the sense, like I feel like how is it moving up, like in corporate America? Obviously, LinkedIn is a company that's more friendly towards diversity, but I'm
Yeah.
curious, like from your perspective, like what it's like to to work with like let's say like a lot of middle-aged males might be typically the decision makers on a lot of
Yeah.
your accounts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. It's fair and it's honest, especially for today. Um, and I'll answer specifically just for myself because it's so hard to answer kind of like across the board because everyone's experience is so unique. But I will say, um, looking at my previous company where my customers were a lot of them, particularly outside of Amazon, were middle aged. A lot of them, my customers and peers, middle aged white men, and it was a different world. And you know, internally I had support, but I feel
Mm.
like there was a lot of like high potential support. You know what I mean? Like I got all this development for different things and a lot of opportunity. I was selected for. There was a lot of visibility, and I think, and I won't say this doesn't really apply to LinkedIn, but I have historically felt like as a Black woman, and this could totally be my own, thought process, but I have felt the need to do more, to
Mm.
prove on a shadow of a doubt that I'm doing this or I'm in this role because I'm qualified to be. I'm good at what I
Mm.
do. I've put in the work. And maybe I should or shouldn't carry that, but I also recognize that organizations need more diversity,
Yeah.
and so if I can be a diverse candidate who happens to be African American and a woman, and also be excellent, to me that's a
Mm.
requirement, So, but yeah, LinkedIn has been so great, such a positive experience because there's like I met a gentleman today from he was one of the sales leaders from the Paris office, and he was just in awe about how much diversity is here in New York. And I was
Uh,
telling him we should trade places for a week because I love it here, but I love Paris too. But it's good, especially here, for that not to be a concern. Today, I now feel like diversity is championed, almost like people are rooting me on, and I
uh,
can't say that that's always been the case. But that's me and my experience. But yeah, and the customers, it depends on the customer. I haven't had an experience here where I even felt that like my ethnicity or sex was a consideration, but not that long ago I did, and it was in the last maybe 6 years. It was shocking to me because I was in Pennsylvania. Like I said, maybe 6 years ago, and I was in biotech sales at the time, and I remember going to an office in a new office that I'd never been to before, and it was a dermatologist, and he warned me. He asked me actually he was very kind, but he asked me had I met Dr. So and so yet, and I said, oh no, tell me about him, or oh no, why do you ask? And he literally warned me that I may not want to go there because he's not he tried to kind of talk around it, but he said he's not as advanced and
mm.
progressive, and he kind of
Huh.
got I just couldn't wrap my mind around it at first, and then he kind of got to the point and said that this is Pennsylvania, but in certain places it's more like the deep South. And so
Mm.
then I understood what he meant, and just it was shocking to me. So I didn't personally
Mm.
experience it, but I close enough, for the discomfort, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. That's pretty cool. That it sounds like you're pretty involved with the and business community, with diversity.
Yeah,
I know Eddie is like pretty big on that as well. That's something
good.
that he's championing with Career Pipe. Um, do you find yourself like mentoring and having a lot of like mentees that come to you that want to pick your brains on how to like progress and move up and be successful in corporate America, being a minority and being a female?
Yeah, I do. And I don't know if it's because I'm accessible since I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I do have a pretty diverse professional background. My journey is different than many. But I do find that a lot. And I can't say why necessarily, but I'm happy that I do, because I had a lot of mentors coming up, and I'm happy to share whatever I can. If it helps somebody else along the way, I'm more than happy to share.
Cool. What are some of the advice you would give? Because I also get a lot of like, I notice like a lot of like Asian males that either want to transition into sales or they want to apply for their first SDR job.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like I attract those, a certain type
Yeah.
of people that reach out to me on
Yeah.
LinkedIn a lot as well.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like what are sort of like some advice that you would give? Because I feel like it is important for people to have mentorship and to find people who they, can learn from. Like what are some of the tips that you would give?
So would that be a tip for someone trying to enter sales?
Yeah, let's
Or
do that first. Yeah.
okay, cool. So I would say that it's important to know your value ahead of time, like know what you have to offer. I feel like a lot of people focus on what they don't have, whether it's a skill set or education, et cetera. But all of us are unique. And particularly when you look at how diverse the world has become, but also our customers. There's something unique about everybody that if you hone in your superpower or whatever it is that makes you uniquely you, it can probably go a long way in helping you to build relationships with people. I think not only is it important to know who you are and what you have to offer, but focus on that and develop it. Become masterful at that. At the same time as be self-aware, like ask for feedback. Like we had a workshop yesterday where we were like, bring it on,
Yeah, I heard it was really intense.
It was intense, but we were like putting on the armor, like bring it. And so, because it's the only way to get better. And I tend to be pretty self-aware, but I did get a piece that I wasn't expecting. I'm glad that I did. So glad. Because that's the only way you're going to excel. I have a girlfriend who's a vice president with another company. It's a what do you call it? CPG, consumer packaged goods, and she's been at the same company since college, and she's gotten a promotion like every month and a half. I'm sorry, every year and a half or so, every 18 months. And I asked her how. I was like, Kim, what are you doing? Because a lot of us are good at what we do. Like I take pride in having excelled, performing at the top, like 10% across the board at every company I've ever worked in, and many times in the top 1%. But Kim is like different. She's like on a path. I'm like, what in the world? And without flinching, she said, it's feedback. She's obsessive about getting feedback. It's constant, and she's asking for it. She's craving it, and she immediately acts on it. So yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference. So I feel like I got off track. Let me get back to your question. So open to feedback early on, and leverage everything that you've done, whether it's volunteer service, anything, like put it on your resume, because people want to know your whole story, like who you are as a whole person. Because I feel like a lot of skills that you need for a job can and will be taught to you, but organizations like LinkedIn and others are looking for intangibles, skills that are harder to teach. So whether it's soft skills or something that's uniquely you.
That's great advice. I do think too often we tend to focus. So I think it sounds like from what I hear from that is have a good balance of like double down on your strengths, but then have the wherewithal to first discover your weaknesses, and then be hungry for it, like to the point of almost obsessed that you're improving like every day. And that
exactly. Get to work on it for sure. Get to work on it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, on that note, like, what do you think, like, your secret sauce is? I feel obviously you've had tremendous success, and you being a top performer consistently, like, says a lot about you. But, like, what do you think has made you so successful in your career?
Thank you. Well, I'm pushing for that top 1 to 10% here. We're heading in the right direction right here. But I have had success here, though, even though I'm just a year in. But even when I look at before here, when I look at kind of like across the board, what have I done? Or what that secret sauce is. And I definitely would say that relationship building is a part of it. Like being genuine in building relationships, because I am true to my word. I am willing to go out of my way to support people who mean something to me, sometimes to a fault. But I understand, I think my time in Mary Kay helps me understand how much you need people. You can't do it alone. You need people, and you need people to do what they say they're going to do. And so to me, I am committed. I do what I say I'm going to do, and I support people because I know how hard it is to start from like ground zero. You start from nothing, and not that I did in life, but I mean, like when I started this business, I literally started with a box and had to build something out of it. And so I believe in that. So I guess reciprocity, being supportive of others, but also understanding that everybody has a goal. So I've done well with creating mobilizers within my accounts now. So I get people to help me and connect me and whatever it is to help me move things forward. And I think part of that is because I genuinely care. I've done some study around like personality types. So I understand kind of early on like who they are, but I also take time to like get to know them so they can tell me who they are and what's important to them, where they're going, what their next play is, and sometimes I might call it out, and compliment them on what they're good at. One example is there was a woman who at first she just did not want any parts of me as her relationship manager. She was like, absolutely not. She escalated to like senior leadership within LSS. Wow. It was crazy. And it wasn't personal. It's just that I was like her 12th relationship manager. And I came in all hot and excited, like the cheerleader. Woo, let's go. And I was very excited. She just was not having it. And when she said, no, I thought she was joking. Like, so I'm like, haha. But she was serious. And so we've come a long way, but I've built such a champion out of her. And the most recent example is that in working with Microsoft on a combo deal in LSS, we can sell combo SKUs with Microsoft. I nominated her to be a speaker at a luncheon we were doing at Microsoft in her city to kind of be the expert on social selling, to share what they're doing with her program and and what she's kind of created, et cetera. And I did it for a few reasons, but for her, I know she's on the fast track and she's super ambitious, and that visibility within her company and outside would mean the world to her. So, just things like that, kind of going beyond yourself and the small picture, being creative, but more than that, caring about other people and what they want and helping them to get it. I would add two things to that. So that's the biggest. That's why I talked about that so long. That's the biggest. But I would also add listening skills, because it goes a long way. People tell you so much if you just listen to what they're saying and listen to what they're not saying. Like slow down enough to hear all of that. And then grit. I went to UMBC where our like slogan, if you will, is like true grit. That's the name of the mascot. That's also the UMBC who took down the number 1 ranked UVA and the NCAA champ. But it makes perfect sense because we're built that way and we work to develop true grit. So yeah, I mean, I think that combination really is what's helped me kind of have a good run at it.
Yeah, I hear. Well, so I'm curious as to what's like a archetype of a buyer or a relationship that you have to really work on in order to find like more common ground with? Because I definitely feel you where there's certain personality archetypes where I'm like, I vibe with definitely much more than others.
Yeah. So your question is, what was the first question? I need to hear the question again. What's a buyer that's like typical for me, right?
Like what's a buyer persona that like you had to kind of work on then like more recently that like you kind of like up your game to be able to like connect with on that like deeper level now?
Got it. Cool. I got to work on my listening. No, that's a good one. I think that probably senior leaders in financial services companies, because unfortunately they still tend to be like 60-year-old white men, where we may or may not have a lot of shared, commonalities. And that industry as a whole tends to be very buttoned up and kind of stone-faced, where they don't give you a lot to go on. And I admittedly am not that knowledgeable about financial services. I have a whole team that helps me with it, but that's just not kind of my strength. So in that scenario, I just do a lot more research and really try to be as prepared as possible. And more of the conversation tends to be business, but it's like, okay, let me make sure that I'm bringing something of value to this conversation. Because what I've found, particularly, I've been selling since I was 22. I mean, really before that, because I started Mary Kay the first time at age 18, but I've been selling professionally since 20, like right out of college. And I remember I was working for Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and on my very second day out in the territory, my teammates couldn't go to this lunch, and it was a lunch with this notorious doctor that everybody was afraid of. And they were like, oh my gosh, we need someone to take the lunch meeting. And I'm like, I'll do it. And they were like, oh, but you're new and he's so mean and da da da. And I'm like, well, I got to meet him at some point.
Yeah.
And he was mean at first, but I recognized that, that, okay, he still needs me. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Understanding him and what his pain points are before going in to ask him, because sometimes people don't want to explain it to you, so doing enough research to understand his pain points and but still learn from him, but come from the beginning, bringing value before you start asking for anything. Because sometimes asking for information is still asking for something, so you have to bring something to the table first sometimes before you start asking for things. And I think that goes along with preparation. But either way, you got to find a way, and preparation goes a long way.
Yeah. I'm hearing a lot of common themes here. So, it's interesting. When you mentioned the story about like learning the individual's like goals, like more on a personal level first, like how they can get promoted and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the top enterprise RMs on the talent side, Amina, she also said the same thing. That's how she became the number one rep as well. She would take a lot of time to get to know like their individual goals and sort of how can I help them get promoted before you get into like the company specific stuff, because like you have to understand them, their personal motivations first. So that it sounded like you do a similar process.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's cool.
Cool. The last two questions that I would like to ask you is, could you explain a little bit, like, what do you like the most about like your current role now? Like, what do you enjoy about being an enterprise or relationship manager in sales solutions?
Yeah. So first, I love LinkedIn. I absolutely, and probably most people do, but I absolutely love this place. That's for starters, loving this place. But I also love selling. I've been selling for my whole career since I was 18. And so I like the most about my job now. My role allows me to essentially tell sales leaders how they should be selling better. And that's a pretty strong position to be in, where your whole career you've been selling and they've been telling you how to do it and how to do it better, yada, yada. But there comes a time where I can pull from so many industries. Like I've had a lot of different experiences, and so I can relate to different people, but I also can call out some things because I try to hear myself when I'm selling, and I constantly, critiquing myself so that I can get better. But I also can do the same with my, peers. And it helps me actually hearing them like, oh my gosh, it's awesome, I'm going to do that, or eek, maybe not. Maybe we could have gone about it this way. But now sales leaders, they don't even need us for like the tactical part, but they need, business is changing quickly. Like the sales environment has changed dramatically in the last just 5 or 10 years, even the last couple years. And so organizations have to keep up. And all my customers are not tech companies with 30-year-old CEOs or 25-year-old CEOs. Some of the organizations have people who've been at the company for 30 years, and they are kind of on their heels and needing our help. So it feels good to be able to help them, and then not only help them, but help influence entire organizations. Like I appreciate sales for so many reasons. One, my parents were both executives, corporate executives in the sales environment. And I lived a good life, and so I know them just being there for me, us being able to have, some luxuries that maybe everybody else may or may not be able to have access to. And I know even in my years in selling, that it's allowed me to live a good life. And so knowing that, okay, if I'm helping you as a salesperson to do better, then you and your whole family are going to have a great life too. So it feels good knowing that I'm impacting entire families. And so I think about it that way, because if you think about, oh, I'm just selling Sales Navigator, I'm just selling a product, then you're probably going to like operate that way. But if in my head, I'm like, my gosh, I'm helping all these families, husbands or single people or whomever, but like, and little kids or no kids at all, but whomever, you're helping people to live better lives because of what their career allows for them. Like, it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like I definitely notice a lot of common themes amongst like the top 1% and 10% sales folks. It's that all you guys definitely think like big picture, more holistically, like impacting a set, you know, it's not just like a product, right? It's like what, like deep rooted, like what's underneath all that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I said, like the family, like that's like, it's like a calling, right? It's like your people's livelihoods, you know, it's like everything. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Cool. And the last question I would love to learn about is like more specific to like mentorship. You know, it seems like you have a lot of mentees and you have a lot of mentors. I do think that there's a lot of people that are afraid to reach out to mentors. Like maybe they think like they're too high up, or you know, they don't have time for them. Like what's your advice on how to seek mentorship?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think it's important to know that you're going to have different mentors over your lifetime, and different mentors can serve different purposes for you. And so the first thing would be to find the right mentor for that place and time in your life. You know, like as awesome as Jeff Weiner is, I don't need Jeff. I would, not that I don't need Jeff. I do need you, Jeff. But I wouldn't ask Jeff to be my mentor just yet, based on where my next play might be. So it's more sensible to, if you can, ask somebody who's more closely related to where you want to go, because they have the insight to teach you. And there's something in it for them as well to teach you, in it for them, if you will. So I think that's part of it. But I also think making sure you're prepared. Like the biggest pet peeve of mine as a mentor, and something I'm always aware of as a mentee, is to be prepared and not waste their time. So if you're asking someone to mentor you, you've got to be prepared. Like, don't expect them to lead the conversation. You got to come to the table with questions, with scenarios. Be prepared to like own it, because it's your development. They've already given you enough, and that's giving you their time and their insight and experience. So you've got to come and bring it. Don't just say, hey, tell me everything you know. That's like what not to do. And then equally as important, if they give you action items, you've got to take action and follow up. Yeah. And if they make an introduction, you have got to not only thank them, but keep them in the loop as like to your progress. It's so important and critical. It's basic, but it's so important. And also understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. Like I do have some sponsors who are very, very senior within organizations. Like before I came here, I had a sponsor at my existing company. He's now gone on to two of them have now gone on to another company, which happens to be the same company, but they're super duper senior. And so what they've done is say my name in scenarios where I may not be present. You know, like a sponsor is going to speak up on your behalf when you're not there. They're not going to give you a ton of their time, you know, and have one-on-one conversations all the time, but they've seen your work or they've seen something about you that makes you stand out, and they're willing to speak up on your behalf when you're not in the room. Like when opportunity arises and they're thinking, okay, who's a good person for this, or who should we consider? That sponsor is going to speak up. A mentor is more of the in your face, like coaching you through stuff and bouncing things off of them. And so it's mainly just make sure it's worth their time by doing your part.
Wow, that's really, really good advice. I wish I heard this like 5 years ago, you know.
All good, not too late.
Yeah, no, it's I actually like learned the hard way, because I reached out to one of the top managers here in the Connected Enterprise group.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I did exactly what you said not to do, where I was not prepared at all. I was kind of just like, oh, how's everything? And then her feedback, because after I meet with anyone, I usually ask like, hey, give me some feedback. And her feedback was like, yeah, like definitely come more prepared, because like, it's cool that you want to get to know me and all, but like, I'm busy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you got to be
yeah.
purposeful with our time.
Yeah.
So that like definitely that was really good feedback on her and
Yeah,
yeah, thank you for that
yeah, for
advice.
sure. For sure.
Cool. Well, thanks for everything, Jheryn. I felt like this is extremely valuable to like any business professional, not just sales. Just to
Yeah,
recap, like what I've learned from our conversation is, definitely, invest in relationships, right? Like relationships is everything. I think putting yourself to be uncomfortable by doing like entrepreneurial things like Mary Kay and similar types of things will help you have more self-awareness, but then will also
yeah,
help you be able to connect with different types of people, regardless of background or color or experiences or where you're from.
absolutely.
And also like be like hungry for feedback, like always ask for feedback no matter what, and actually implement it, right?
Yeah,
Knowing is one
yeah,
thing, but then practicing and then continuously like give updating the people that have helped you, so that way like they feel like they're invested and they'll continue to give you feedback on how you can
yeah, for
improve.
sure.
Is
For
there
sure.
anything else that you want to highlight or that I missed?
Um, I think the one last thing is that I would say it's okay to invest in yourself by joining organizations that will help you grow. Don't just wait for your company to like feed opportunities to you, or say, oh, they'll roll out some sort of training. Sometimes it's the extra effort, whether it's joining the organization I used to lead is called National Sales Network, where a lot of what I know, I learned there. We brought in people who would teach us this, and I've been recruited from that organization for like every job I've ever had. Maybe not every job, but between LinkedIn and that organization, every job I've ever had have come through those two. And it's because what it shows when you're doing something extra is that you are invested in your own development, and you're not just waiting, or not just, taking, the status quo, because everybody's getting that. So again, when it goes to kind of professional development and setting yourself apart, be willing to invest in yourself. And if it costs you a couple of dollars, fine. That's fine. And if it takes a little time, again, fine. Ideally, you think that your future is worth it. That's
Awesome.
it. Mhm.
Well, thanks for sharing. I hope everyone enjoyed this. And what's the best way someone can reach out to you if they have any questions or they want to
Yeah.
connect and discuss anything with you?
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite platform of all time. LinkedIn is the best. I'm super responsive on LinkedIn. The spelling of my name, it'll probably be here, but it's Jheryn Kenney, Kenney.
Great. Yeah, I'll connect. I'll link to your LinkedIn profile as well. So if anyone wants
Perfect.
to reach out, they can reach out to you.
Cool. I love it.
All right. Thanks again.
Thanks. Thank you too, Davidson. It's been great.